my life. Hmm. 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 I better announce that I'm live. Because we are live. We are young. Heartache to heartache we stand. No, what was it? No promises, no demands. Love is a battlefield. We are young. Do 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 do. Don't put that there, put it here. Love is a battlefield. Love is a battlefield. Oh, hello, how are you? I'm feeling a lot better, but I sound terrible. I'm just trying to fit. I don't know how to do all this shit still. And you know what? Still, I know I still sound terrible too. But you know what's still upsetting me is this stuff. I mean, why? Why doesn't it work? Love is a battlefield. Young, heartache to heartache we stand. No promises, no demands. I'm just gonna announce on here. Love is a battlefield. Yeah, put your information up and we'll we'll look at some of it. Good evening, hello. Hello, sweetheart. Love is a battlefield. Excuse me. I sound like Courtney Love. I am Doll Parts. That's another song that I love. I'm just announcing that I'm live. Excuse me. I am Doll Eyes, Doll Mouth, Doll Legs. I am Doll Arms, Big Veins, Doll Bait. Yeah, they really want you, they really want you, they really do. Okay, I'm a couple minutes late. Yeah, they really want you, they really want you. Well, I do too. Girl with the most cake. You had Frankie Goes to Hollywood in your head all day? Relax, don't do it. When you want to go do it. You know what this song's about? It's about anal sex. Relax, don't do it. When you want to come. When you want to come. Like, yeah, it's about anal sex. Speaking of Synastry, well, I shouldn't do that, but yeah, anal sex. Synastry. If anyone remembers Elastica from the 90s, the connection is made. That was in Hackers. If anyone remembers the movie Hackers, now I'm dating myself. I saw it in the theater. The connection is made. Angelina Jolie's she's topless at one point in that. Angelina Jolie was in that when she was young. Okay, I see people's birth info, so we'll start looking at stuff. But I do have an outline also of how we want to tackle some of this. But your charts will be our examples. So, but you can see some of my outline just so you know what we're looking at. Because I wanted to talk about temperament again. This was stuff that we really didn't get to dig into. And it's really interesting. And it'll be interesting in your charts, especially when it comes to compatibility with people. So for those of you who don't remember, excuse me. For those of you who don't remember the movie Hackers, I've got to put my salt stuff in the water, but it makes it fizz, and I don't want to. I don't want to cause an explosion. I don't want to cause an explosion. My lipstick is all effed up. I just noticed. What are you gonna do? In the mirror, it looked fine. On camera, it looks. I gotta stop looking at myself on camera. It's not healthy. It's really not healthy. Oh my gosh. No, no, please. No, this is like a science experiment. No, no, please, no. It's like putting Mentos in a fucking Pepsi bottle. I used up one of my F words right there. I only think I get two. It's like a R-rated movie on YouTube. I said it wasn't for children, but tricks are not for kids. Oh, wait. Silly rabbit, tricks are for kids. I'm sorry, if I don't have salt water, I'll turn into a pillar of not salt. Sorry. Anyway, I want to be the girl with the most cake. Let's take one of your charts and we'll start looking at some of this nonsense. Joan Jett, Pat Benatar. Love is a battlefield. We are young. Heartache to heartache we stand. Kayla was on here first. No promises. But just like for other people who are watching, first of all, like the stream. I'm not doing anything till people like the goddamn stream. I'm actually going to look at this and see how many people like the stream. How many people are... Oh, 20 people. Has everyone liked the stream? Like the stream. Like the stream. Like the stream. Thank you. We are young. Heartache to heartache. Oh, hi, Shakti. How are you? Alex. Nice to see you. Hi, Keisha. Cool. We're going to get to as many people as possible. But we're going to look at some specifics here. But make sure you like the stream, please. Oops, I shouldn't do that. What am I doing here? Like the stream. And I was going to say something else, and now I can't remember what it was. Oh, subscribe to the channel. That's what it was. Like the stream and subscribe to the channel. Okay? Because otherwise, no. Because otherwise, this is not good. Because I'm not just going to do this out of the kindness of my heart. I'm trying to, make this a thing. Please, like the stream and subscribe to the channel. Like the stream, subscribe to the channel. I got you, Gadget. Does anyone remember Inspector Gadget? Dr. Claw? I got you, Gadget. Anyway. My cat. Meow. Where's my cat? Anyway, I was looking at Kayla's stuff here. I was doing Kayla. Kayla. 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 1983. That's the year I was born. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm sorry, I have ADHD and I'm a Gemini. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you said 9:58. I'll assume that's AM. Because every astrologer has to do military time. My dad, I'd be like, what time is it, Dad? And he'd be like, 14:26. He was a colonel. And I'd be like, oh, okay. 14:26. That's 2:26. Okay. PM. Midwest City? Is that really a name of a city? Midwest City? Midwest City? sorry. Oh, wait, city, not just Midwest. It's Midwest City. I live in Midwest City, Midwest. Okay. Okay. So there's Kayla. And let's put Kayla's hymn. Kayla's hymn. 126. Aquarius, 1983. We're all the same year. He's an old fogey from January. I'm May. Oh, and I'm older than you because you're in November. Anyway, 651. And then we got to show people some of this shit because this is important stuff. You know, and you're just one example here, and we'll go to others. Oops, New Braunfels. New Braunfels. I'll tell you what, New Braunfels, Texas. That boy ain't right. I sell propane and propane accessories out of New Braunfels, Texas. I'm a little loopy right now. I've been, I was, loosening up a little bit ago. Okay, so, well, let's look at some of this stuff individually. I wanted to talk about temperament again. So let's look at this a little bit. So if you recall, for those of you who were here last time, temperament is this really cool concept in astrology, especially medieval astrology, but it comes in handy for relationship astrology. So just to recap, we won't stick on this too long because I just want to do a demo of it. But the four basic qualities, hot, cold, right? Wet, dry. So so hot basically is active, cold is passive, right? Wet is more relational or clingy, and dry is more independent or leave me alone, right? Leave me alone. Now, those four basic temperaments, right, are combinations of hot, wet, cold, and dry. Sorry, hot, cold, wet, dry. So, hot and wet is the sanguine temperament. Hot and dry is choleric or choleric. Cold and wet is phlegmatic, as you can see here. Cold and dry is melancholic. Okay, we'll talk about what each of those mean in just a little bit. So now just because we're going to get to a formula here of how to find out your temperament, and we're going to show you here on Kayla. Okay, to get your temperament, we follow these basic steps, and this sort of comes from William Lilly. Okay, but I look at these seven of the eight. The eighth thing, I don't even understand what that means, but we look at the temperament of your air sign, of your of your ascendant sign, of your ascendant ruler, of the planets aspecting your ascendant, right? The planets in the first house, if there are any, moon sign, moon phase, seasons of the sun, right? And we'll talk about seasons in just a little bit. And this thing called Lord of the Geniture, which I don't understand whatsoever. So now just a little couple words here about each of these things where we get these criteria, right? So the signs, as far as the zodiacal signs are concerned, the fire signs are hot and dry, which might seem pretty intuitive. The air signs are hot and wet. Yeah. Guess what I am? Moisture, water, vapor. What happens when you heat up water? Right? Gets steamy. Anyway. Earth signs are cold and dry. Water signs are cold and wet. You can see the differential there. We think of like Cancer, even Scorpio and Pisces is a lot more clingy and relational, right? As far as the planets go, the moon is cold and wet and salty by taste. Just as an interesting aside. That's from Valens. The sun is hot and dry and sour like lemon, puckery. Mercury, I don't remember what all the flavors are, so don't get your knickers all in a bunch and sand all up in them. I have a whole. I'm gonna be switching between lots of different. Again, Gemini. Like I have all these different fidget toys that my daughter never uses, and then I end up using them because I'm the one with ADHD. She's just 9, you know. So I have all these things I play with, you know. But this is to keep me on track, believe it or not, because I know where I was going with this. But anyway, oh, and the thing that sucks is there's a gain issue, and I don't know what to do about it. There's this low hum always in the background. There's a low hum, white noise, and I don't know why. Oh, I think it's the computer. I'll have to figure this stuff out later. Maybe if I hold the microphone like that. Or maybe if I put it right in front of me. Maybe that white noise will go away. Why does it have to be white noise? Why can't it be blue noise? You know? Taurus Mercury stuff. So anyway, Mercury is cold and dry. But I said unless Oriental. What does that mean? Well, Oriental planets are rising, right? Before the sun. And then Occidental planets are rising after the sun. Occidental being west and Oriental being east. So, now the same thing goes for Venus. Venus is typically cold and wet. But, you know, Ptolemy said she's hot and wet. Mars is hot and dry. Jupiter's is hot and wet. Saturn is cold and dry, blah, 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 blah. As far as moon phases, right? We have the new moon and the crescent. Ooh, let me bring up this fun little picture, right, that I did. Oops. Is it this one? Yeah. So you can see the moon phases here. Can you see the moon phases? So, excuse me. So you can see here. So the new moon and the crescent phase, those are sanguine, right? They also have to do with the spring season, okay? Then the first quarter to the gibbous is choleric, right? Hot and dry, which sort of makes sense, and it has to do with summer, right? And then the full moon and the disseminating here. Now, remember, it's not like a light switch. It's not like all the... We typically say for a new moon, it's the first 45 degrees, right? You know, 45 degrees in front of the sun. First quarter, 90 degrees to 135 degrees in front of the sun, right? And we're saying in front, moving this way zodiacally, which is called secondary motion, right? And then gibbous to full moon is 135 to 180 degrees in front of the sun. But, right, I'm saying, and then disseminating, you know, behind the sun. behind the sun. You see, and I'll do a whole nother thing on the moon at some point, don't worry. But I'm just showing you this because this is the phlegmatic, right? And then this is the melancholic. Right? And melancholic is cold and dry, phlegmatic is cold and wet. And this fall is cold and wet here, having to do with these phases. And winter is cold and dry, melancholic. Right? So anyway, let's move that back down. So let's look here at Kayla's chart and see if we can determine her moon phase, or sorry, her temperament. So now one thing about the temperaments, I want to read you some descriptions. These are from Nicholas Culpeper's. He was a 17th century herbalist and botanist in England. And he wrote what's called Galen's Art of Physic. And I guess it's some kind of tome for people who are, you know, witches and herbalists and, you know, who put sage everywhere and all that kind of stuff. I love those people. They just smell like patchouli oil, you know. But it's okay. It's okay, you know. You know, I dig girls with dreads and stuff like that. And, you know, whatever. That's cool. So sanguine, what does he call? He calls it, no, these are sort of archaic terms he uses. Merry, cheerful creatures, bountiful, pitiful, merciful, courteous, bold, trusty, right? Well, you know what? We'll read this as we go on because we don't want to waste time with this. So the first thing that we look at here to get her temperament, we look at her ascendant sign. So her ascendant sign is Sagittarius. Those are hot and dry. So, well, let's take a little grid here and we'll make a little notes. Let's do, oops. I don't need to show you everyone else's. Oops. These are people from wow, these are previous weeks of charts. Oh, look, it's Ashlyn. Ashlyn's here religiously. Thank you, Ashlyn. She's so supportive. So anyway, so we've got AC ruler, AC Sagittarius, which is hot and dry. So we have one hot, one dry. I guess we should say hot and dry. There we go. Okay, AC ruler is Jupiter, which is hot and wet. So the next thing, let's close that one. Ugh, sticky notes. Why they gotta be so sticky? We are young. Okay, planets aspecting the ascendant. Do we see any? We'll just do a quick little, so we don't spend a lot of time on it. Aspects. Ascendant. Mars. Mars is hot and dry. Where's our note? Where's our note? Mars is hot and dry. Mr. Potter. I don't know. So 3, we did, planets aspect in the AC, we did that. Moon sign. So her moon here is in Aquarius. So it's an air sign. Air signs are hot and wet. Aqua, hot, wet. And then her moon phase. We can eyeball her moon phase here like we could look at that chart and we could see it's about a first quarter moon. Actually, it's exactly a first quarter moon. Look at that, 19 degrees, 19 degrees. Moon square, first quarter moon people have it rough. It's where people face a lot of opposition. Oftentimes. So moon sign, moon phase, and we know the first quarter is choleric or choleric. Choleric? Yeah, choleric. So hot and dry. First quarter. And then season of the sun sign, which is winter. Oh, well, it wasn't quite winter. It was still fall, right? It was fall. It was fall, so cold, wet. Okay, and now we kind of tally those up. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hot and 1 cold. So obviously she's hot. So Kayla's probably going to be more of an active person, more of an extrovert perhaps. And let's see, we've got dry, 1, 2, 3, and wet, 1, 2, 3. So evenly dry and wet. So she can be sort of clingy or she can be sort of independent. She probably needs her space quite a bit. So these are things to notice because when you look at the temperaments of your partners, you just have to be aware of these things, right? So wet people, they need to be around their people. Whereas dry people, they need space. Like, yes, I love you, cool, over there, right? And so some of these things work, right? Because opposites do attract. But it can also be a painful situation for people who need certain things, right? So now cold people cold makes things slower in general, doesn't it? And it tends to be a bit more passive. you have to you have to excuse my cough. I'm so sorry. I'm still sick. So, oh gosh. So cold slows things down. Cold people are they seem less optimistic. They might seem a bit more dour. They might seem more sad, stuff like that, or quiet perhaps. Whereas hot people are just making a scene everywhere. Or they might be the class clowns, or they might be the popular people, or whatever. Oh, here's the descriptions. So sanguine, which I am, which is hot and wet. Merry, cheerful creatures, bountiful, pitiful, merciful, courteous, bold, trusty. So Kayla here is equal parts sanguine and choleric. So here is choleric. Quick-witted, bold, hasty, furious, quarrelsome, fraudulent, eloquent, courageous. What do you notice there? It's a lot of fire sign traits, huh? People who are quarrelsome, people who are combative, standoffish. Whereas you see in sanguine, it's merciful, right? Courteous. Whereas, it's furious, hasty, right? Down in choleric. And then we have melancholic, which, right, this is cold and dry. These are self-lovers, cowards, afraid, fearful, careful, solitary, lumpish, unsociable, mistrustful, suspicious, spiteful, slovenly. You see, these are a lot of Saturnian traits, right? Being ascribed to melancholic. And Saturn is cold and dry. Yeah? So we know that not all people who are melancholic are cowards or fearful or whatever, but they do tend to be solitary. They do tend to be not so very sociable, and they can be quite suspicious or mistrustful. So, these are things just to be... Now, again, it's a bit harder to get going. Phlegmatic people, dull, heavy, slothful, drowsy, sleepy, cowardly, forgetful, swift as a snail. So you see a lot of Rip Van Winkle, slothful, right? So think of sloth. Perhaps known as lazy or whatever. Um, you'll see things like cowardly, cowardly. It's not necessarily true. These are all, perhaps a bit. What's the word? When something is more than it really is, not, you know what I mean? Not euphemistic. What is the word? Anyway, I can't remember when something is overblown. Ugh. What's the word? When something is... Ugh. Not oxymoronical. That's when something is contradictory. Not oxymoronical. What? My brain is going to kill me. And it's so funny because after I, get loopy, this stuff happens where I get stuck on something I can't remember. No, it starts with an O. I'm pretty sure. But yes, it's sort of not to be... It's something I use all the time, too. Hyperbolic. It doesn't start with an O. Not to be hyperbolic. Holy shit. It took me forever to do that. Hyperbolic. Not to be hyperbolic. But, you can look at some of the differences. I'm so sorry about that. Brain derailment. But you see the thing that's different between the cold and dry here. No, hyperbolic, not ironic. Hyperbolic. Melancholic, hyperbolic.
Melancholic, hyperbolic, harder, better, faster, stronger. Melancholic, sanguine, choleric, choleric, phlegmatic, melancholic.
Anyway.
Hyperbolic.
Anyway. I love Daft Punk so much. I've probably said that 1,000 times already. But some of the big differences here. right? Melancholic, self-lovers, solitary, unsociable. It doesn't say any of that down in phlegmatic. Just says sleepy, and dull and heavy. So you see the difference is people and not people. So anyway, we know that Kayla's equal parts yada yada. And we'll speed through this now that we have that. And let's get her hymns. Her hymns. God damn it. Her hymns. Ooh. So we look at, let's look at him really quick. And I'll do this really quick. So cold and dry, right? Saturn is cold and dry too. We know that, right? Capricorn's cold and dry. Saturn's cold and dry. And is anything aspecting the ascendant here? And just for aspects, quick reference, look at the sextile first, look at the square sign next, and look at the trine sign next, right? And then look at the opposition. No, we don't see anything all that significant, right? And then we look at, where's the moon? The moon's in Cancer. So cold and dry, cold and dry, cold and wet, moon phase. Hot and dry, it's gibbous, right? We could tell it's gibbous because it's about trine. Well, first quarter to gibbous, we'll call it hot and dry. I'm calling it hot and dry. I'm calling it gibbous. Gibbous, 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 gibbous. And then, so moon phase, moon sign, and then winter, which is cold and dry. So we have cold and dry, cold and dry. We have cold and wet, and hot and dry. And then we have cold and dry. So we can already tell that that Kayla's hymn is mostly melancholic, right? Mostly cold and dry. So he's going to be more of a loner and more solitary. Whereas Kayla's going to be more of the life of the party probably, or more of a fun person. So he might be the type that doesn't want to go out when she does. He's also going to be more organized than she is, although she might be a little organized too. But a wet person's desk, for example, right, is going to be messy. Or look at it. I'm a very wet person. And look, my bed's covered with books because I was cramming before this whole thing. There's a cat over there. I have a wet room. There's all kinds of stuff. So, and this is after me making it nicer for you people. So anyway, so you can see that, they may have some compatibility just from those things. But there also might be a little bit of tension between the need to relate to other people or not. Or maybe Kayla's partner not ever wanting to go out or not wanting to socialize, and she wants friends or whatever, So really quickly too, we'll go to the Synastry. Well, what else did I want to talk about here from the list? And we should go to someone else's. Oh, the 7th house ruler. That's what I wanted to talk about. This is also quite important. The 7th house ruler. So Kayla's 7th house is Gemini, right? And I do whole sign houses. He is organized, ADHD, and you're the walking tornado. Well, that makes sense because you're more wet. And I don't just mean, your enjoyment level. I mean, symbolically. Think about what wet stuff does. This is dry paper. Here, let's try another good example. This is dry paper, right? Dry. When I put water on it, it sticks together, right? So wet stuff clings, right? Wet paper. So it gives you a hint at the metaphor a little bit. And dry people too, dry personalities. They're dry. You know, think of that Virgo energy. I mean, that's what I think of when I think of dry, is like the Virgo energy. I mean, Virgo's more like cold and dry, but wet is destructive. Oh, believe me, I'm very wet and I destroy things. I made a joke earlier because I was watching, Mr. Beast. I just have to say, I love Mr. Beast. And apparently, he's like the biggest YouTuber in the world. And his friend Chris is transgender and came out. And of course, half of the people think this is great and, support them, or I don't know Chris's pronouns, but support them. Whereas another half of people, or at least half of people who comment on it, think it's disgusting and that Chris is evil and all this sort of stuff. And Mr. Beast has come out in support of his friend Chris being gender nonconforming, or being transgender, rather. And this is just really cool because there's a lot of hate out there. A lot of hate. So I can't remember why I mentioned Mr. Beast, but I've been watching a lot of this YouTuber drama lately because I follow a couple people. Mostly lefties, I'm mostly into current events in politics. So, but I thought this was really cool because this is going to be very helpful, because a lot of people are transphobic because they've never met a trans person or spoken with the trans person. And I can be a terrible bitch, I know, but I'm not that bad. So anyway, let's go back to Kayla's chart here. So, what was I talking about? Oh yeah. The other thing we look for really quick is the 7th house ruler. You would love to see more love. Yeah, I would love to see more love too. But I mean, I want to see more dynamism also. Well, love is dynamic. What people call love, people have a lot of weird ideas about love. They think it has to be sentimental, and then it has to be wimpy. And they start associating love with, hippie ideas and all kinds of stuff. I have no problem with hippies, but love is not wimpy, right? Love is doing what is right at all costs. Love is the awareness of our interdependence with each other. That's love. This is me talking. You can look up love and philosophy and everything. The Greeks had 4 different types of love? There was agape, eros, whatever else. There's 4 of them, So anyway, I won't go into all that, but love ultimately has nothing to do with self. And yet it does, because it's self that it is related to all other selves and to existence. And that's why eventually love is ultimately selfish. Because over time, as our identification and our consciousness expands as spiritual beings, if we want to use such a weird phrase, such a weak phrase, because I really hate the word spiritual. It's got such a weak connotation now. And these aren't weak things. These are powerful, powerful things. Like when you're talking about deity and the source of existence, that's a powerful thing. In the Old Testament, the Jews said, our God is an all-consuming fire, right? Shiva is the destroyer. I am become death, the destroyer of worlds, right? Love is the principle that builds things one after destruction. You see, love is not wimpy. Look at the story of the Christ, the so-called emissary of love. He's put through torture and death for love. That is to sacrifice yourself. He even says, no greater love hath a man than this, that he should give up his life for his friends. I'm sorry, I quote scripture like, oh, you're begging me to do your synastry. Well, the point of this is about synastry. I'm not going to just sit here and get to everyone's fucking synastry. I will try my best, but these are examples. And it's about love. So, I will get to people as I can. And I'll start randomly picking people and I won't just go in order. Although I should go in order because some people were patient enough. So anyway, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be a bitch. I'm just saying this is all part of it. This isn't just like, well, you got what? And you got what? Mars squared up too. You better watch out. It can be a doozy. So anyway, the 7th house ruler here is Mercury. And it's in the 12th house. So she's got to watch out because she's going to go for fixer-uppers and, people with mental illness or addiction issues probably. Whereas his 7th house ruler is the moon and it's in the 7th house. I do book sessions privately and they're wonderful sessions. I actually go like an hour and a half to 2 hours deep into synastry with people. And not just synastry, but composite charts. Relationship astrology is one of my specialties. So anyway, the moon in the 7th house, and it's the 7th house ruler. So this person's probably going to be a little bit, quote, codependent. Oh, you have all night? Well, I don't have all night. I went for 3 hours last week, and I just now started to feel better. And it takes me, sometimes a whole day to prepare for this shit. That's the thing. You're still here learning from me? Well, I'm not trying to be a bitch. I love you. I love you all. I just was sick. And I am a bitch. I'm sorry. I have Mars conjunct my sun. That's why I was saying I identify as a woman and as a attack helicopter. That's why I started talking about the trans thing. Because they were talking about identifying as an attack helicopter. And I identify as a woman and a motherfucking attack helicopter. So anyway. I'm not a puppet. I am a grenade. I hate Marilyn Manson. No, he's awful. But, some of those songs were catchy. So anyway. So this person's going to be a little bit more codependent, even though they're a bit of a loner. So, they want a relationship, but it's probably hard for them to relate to people. Okay. So let's look at the bi-wheel. We'll put Kayla on the inside. Oh, excuse me. That's so gross and unprofessional. I blame the water. So anyway, this is a bi-wheel, right? Which just means a chart on the outside and a chart on the inside. It's very sort of self-explanatory. And we just look at what, right? Planets fall into what houses predominantly. And it looks like mostly the first house, right? Although we look for traditional planets more than just these outer planets. And we have the Sun and Venus in the 3rd house, right? Mars in the 4th here. So whatever house the Sun is in, that's going to be, so it's the house person that experiences the planet person in a certain way. The planet person sort of feeds the house person, right? So, excuse me. So the house person will see the sun person as, perhaps someone that they can communicate with or identify with, right? That they can share ideas with, Oh, and let's look at the moon, right? So, right, the sun person is shining on the house person. So perhaps they make them feel intelligent or make them feel, like they, their ideas are appreciated, that they can have conversations with each other. So, and then look at the moon here, because the moon's an important planet. Oh, and we should talk about what each of these planets mean in synastry too. And we'll get to that. We'll go to someone else's in just a second as an example for that stuff. But let's just for fun talk about a couple of her things here. And you can do progressions with relationship astrology too. You could do progression synastry for those of you who visited my progressions live and who know about progressions. Who knows about progressions? A day equals a year. I guess that would be a whole nother topic. Gosh, I could go for days and days on this. It's redonkulous. The house person, so Kayla, the house person is who's ever on the inner wheel. I could do it back and forth. I could put him on the inside and you on the outside, and we could be like, yo, um, Kayla's sun falls into his 11th house and is conjunct his midheaven, right? So you make him feel seen. He's someone who probably hides in the dark or hides in the shadows. He's a fucking mushroom, isn't he? I gotta stop saying the F word because I'll get in trouble. But he's basically a mushroom, probably. And so you shine a light on him and metaphorically kill his fungus. Oh, you have to sleep? Okay, Nina, I'm sorry I didn't get to your stuff, but this is organic and I go by a script. And I love you and I hope you get to watch later. And I'll have your birth info here. So, you got a notebook yesterday and writing all your astrology notes. There's so much you need to learn, but it's fun. Well, yeah, there's a lot to learn. I'm trying to keep it structured because if I don't, I'll go all ADHD on you all. You see? And then having the sun be in the 11th house too, there's something about friendship here. Right? Maybe they were friends first or maybe they met through friends. Or a mutual hobby or a mutual interest or something like that, a mutual interest group. Maybe they share interests or values or something like that. But you can do a bi-wheel either way, right? So, but look at the 7th house rulers. This will be important. Let's go back to Kayla on the inside. So the 7th house rulers, right? Let's see if they're doing anything interesting. So Kayla's 7th house ruler is Mercury, right? Is her Mercury or his Mercury doing anything interesting to each other? And then his 7th house ruler was, I don't remember, what was his rising sign? Oh yeah, Capricorn. So his 7th house ruler is the moon. So then we would look for interesting moon synastry too between them. And I'm just going to, do it the lazy way. Oh wait, I'm just going to do it the lazy way right now. Right? And we're just going to look at aspects. I'm sorry, I'm being lazy. And of course, aspects to Venus. So let's talk about this really quick and we'll pull up someone else. Well, you know what? Just for her sake, I'll mention a couple synastry things for her and then we'll move on to the next person's chart. So we can use someone else as an example. Okay? Now, synastry grid. So Kayla. So they have moon square Venus right off the bat. See, moon in synastry. Let's talk about that a little bit. So the moon in synastry, emotional security and fear, right? It's sort of like our unconscious nature. Like I say here, hard aspects of the moon are quite difficult. Why? Because it is sort of our emotional security. It's what we do without thinking about it. It's where we experience fear and all those sort of involuntary things. So when someone has the moon square Venus, the moon person finds it hard to relax in the Venus person's company, typically. You're the Venus person here, Kayla. So maybe the moon person, oftentimes the moon person is scared to lose the Venus person. Or might just have this underlying stressful, thing going on. So they might be afraid because Venus is attractive. They see Venus as attractive. And so they might be concerned that Venus is going to find someone more attractive or confident or whatever than them. And this is usually indicative of the moon person being less confident. And we would typically discern some of that stuff from the natal chart initially anyway. Let's look for a couple bad aspects and a couple good, right? So I look for Mars, Saturn stuff right off the bat when I'm talking to a client. Excuse me. And your Saturn square his sun is definitely difficult. Saturn might get jealous of the sun. Or Saturn might feel like, the sun is shining on other people when the sun should just shine on them. Saturn tries to bottle the sun's light. What was that? Isn't there some movie or story where someone tries to contain the sunlight, or I guess lightning, put lightning in a bottle, but put the sun in a bottle, right? Try to contain the sunlight. And you can't really. So the sun person feels stifled, and the Saturn person feels insecure typically. Um, because Saturn wants the sun all to himself. Pluto squared the sun. So Pluto, we'll talk about Pluto aspects in someone else's chart in just a little bit. But this is a Plutonic relationship, right? Or Plutonian. Because your Pluto's trine their moon, square the sun, and trine Venus. Pluto trine Venus is one of my favorite aspects in Synastry. It's hot as AF, right? But it can get very obsessive. And when you have other difficult aspects, it can get toxic because people don't want to break up, right? And the only relationships that are ever fulfilling are the ones you're willing to walk away from. Because the second you're too scared to be in a relation or to leave a relationship, and I've said this thousands of times, and I say this to clients like every other day that I have relationship readings. If you're too scared to leave a relationship, you're going to let yourself be treated like shit, right? It should be quite obvious, but it took me 38 years to learn, and at least 3 abusive relationships in the process, right? And look at us. Most of us who've been through trauma and narcissistic abuse, what do? We fall for those people over and over and over again, typically because it's familiar, right? Usually because one of our parents, right, doesn't make it an excuse, and it doesn't make, our parents are just as fallible as we are, obviously. We all do terrible things. We all have evil in our hearts. We also all have a certain amount of love and good in our hearts. Even the most evil people doesn't mean we let anyone push us around, right? You never let anyone push you around. Excuse me. Right? Don't let anyone come in your house and push you around. But I'm only mentioning all this stuff because it's quite important. And we'll get to, because it's our conditioning, you see? So in those of us who've been through it, we keep repeating it until we finally see it clearly. And we say enough is enough, right? And so you have to make a choice. Some of us, we just have bad luck with relationships and we'll never have good luck. There's a certain fated nature or element to astrology, right? We can tell the general way someone's life is going to unfold, right? And that's why we look to the condition of the 7th house ruler oftentimes. A poor 7th house ruler can sort of indicate difficulties in relationships in general. So let's look now. Uranus square Mars, right? The Uranus person typically wants their freedom. But aspects like these tend to go along with affairs or scandalous relationships in some way. Some cool things about this are good aspects with Saturn here. These are longevity, right? And let's talk about this a little bit. So Saturn trine the moon, Saturn trine Mars, which would usually be a very bad aspect if it were square or something else, but trine here sort of harnesses that martial energy, And when you see something like that here and that's something that's so close, you can see a healthy discipline that the Saturn person brings to the relationship. Perhaps the Mars person spends too much money. Perhaps the Mars person is a bit licentious. Perhaps they're just straight up careless. And the Saturn person sort of gently, So maybe Kayla wears the pants here in the relationship and she's the Plutonian person. So maybe this other person's a little bit codependent, but she's also like, a pet owner in a way. I come from the kink world, so, there's legitimate relationships where people own other people. And I'm not talking about, they're consensual relationships, but, one person likes to be a fox or a dog or a cat. And the other person likes to be an owner, right? And there's all sorts of filthy stuff that can happen and all that sort of thing. But, so anyway, but let's go to other people here. That's all interesting stuff. Let's go to someone. You've been together for almost 20 years. Sweet. Well, I mean, there's a lot of Saturn stuff there. So I'm sure that he's your pet in some way, you know? You don't own me. I'm not one of your many toys. You don't own me. Don't say I can't be with other boys. So don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to say. When I go out with you, don't put me on display. Who else? Who should I do next? We did Kayla. I'll pick a random person here. I hope it's someone who's still here. Courtney? No, there's no Courtney. Is Ear Sorensen still here? Ear? Or who else? Who else do I got here? Oh, Priestess Shakti. Is Priestess Shakti have, because I was supposed to get to you last time, Priestess. Priestess, do you have your stuff on here? Are you still here? Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to say. Priestess, put your synastry here on display. The stubborn kind? Well, yeah, I mean, he's very cold and dry. I mean, he's a lump. It's hard to get him to move, you know? I mean, look, and he's got Saturn moon stuff going on, so he's probably got mommy issues. Priestess, do you want to put your synastry stuff here? I owe you from last time, Priestess. Put your synastry stuff there. But I'll go into someone else if you don't get it quick, and I'll get to you next. Who do we got? Let me go back, see who else was here. Elizabeth Carl. Oh, Elkhart. Elkhart, Indiana. Elkhart, Indiana. I know about Elkhart. That's where all the RVs are made. Who I know. I had another client from Elkhart. I think, Elizabeth, I do remember you. I think I've already looked at your chart because I remember Elkhart. I remember Elkhart. Sometimes the stubborn ones. Priestess. Oh, yeah. Well, Priestess. Well, you have their birthday. Wait, that's your stuff. Did you want synastry with this person, with someone? Is that yours? I'm gonna open because I think. No? Okay. So 11 for Priestess. 11 for 79. $11 for 79, 1048 NYC. Yeah, but didn't you want synastry? Didn't you want to look at synastry? 1048 NYC, New York. Bum 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 bum. I'm spreading the news. Did you? Priestess, you didn't give me someone else's stuff to look at with you. I have to look at someone else's, Priestess. Put your partner up there. I need a partner. I need a partner. Let's see here. I'll do Larissa. Oh, wait, here we do. Okay, Dre. We'll do Dre. Sometimes everybody want to talk that they got something to say, but nothing comes out when they move the lips. There's a bunch of gibberish and motherfuckers that they forgot about Dre. That was the Chronic 2. People don't remember the Chronic 1. I think I was in elementary school when it came out. Chronic. Bow down. When you come to my town. Bow down. 'Cause I ain't a hater like you. Bow down to someone that's greater than you. Her. Ray. Her. There we go. Sorry. Okay. 3. Oops. Not the year 995. Priestess, can you put your stuff in the, or your partner's stuff or whatever in the chat? My brain is not working. 10:47 a.m. And where is this? Canyon City, Colorado. I'm in Colorado. Okay, so let's first look at Dre. Let's talk about what some of these aspects in the planets mean. So, well, first of all, let's look at Dre's temperament. We can tell that Dre's at the very end of a gibbous moon here because you could see the moon's almost opposite the sun, right? Getting very close. So almost a full moon. I guess we call that a gibbous, right? So that's hot and wet. And then he's in the spring, which is also hot and wet. Air is hot and wet. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Hot and dry is gibbous moon. I'm sorry. Dry is gibbous moon. Okay. But his ascendant sign is hot and wet, ruled by Venus, who is cold and wet. So we got hot and wet, cold and wet. And then we got the ruler, or we did that. And then we got the moon, right, which is Libra, which is hot and wet. Oh, is anything aspecting the ascendant? Anything aspecting? Nothing of consequence? No. No. So anyway, so then we go to the moon sign is also hot and wet. And the ruler is also cold and wet. So we're pretty even right now. So the tiebreaker then is the season of the sun, which is spring, which is hot and wet. So that just barely makes Dre a bit more hot and wet, right? So Dre's probably a bit more of an extrovert. I mean, Dre's a Libra moon, right? So I'm a Libra moon too. Dre's going to be more relationship oriented. Dre's going to care more about what people think. Dre's also got more planets over here in the western half of the chart. Venus is in the 7th house, even though she's in Aries. Venus in Aries tends to be more independent, but in the 7th house will also be a bit more, codependent or, want someone to relate to. Everyone wants their space, and I'm sure Dre still wants a little bit of their space, or your space. I mean, you're right here. Priestess, did you put your partner's birth info in the chat so I can see it? Oh, yes, one secondary. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills because I don't know what's going on. I don't know. If you want to view Synastry, simply look with me and close this. Sorry. Anyway. I don't know why I do stuff like that. It just, shit pops in my head and I have to, I just do things. I just am. Fabulous. James St. James said that. So anyway, that's oh, and the seventh house ruler, Mars, right? And Mars is in the sixth house. That tends to make someone a little bit more subservient or submissive in general. I mean, they want someone they can depend on. I ain't got nobody that I can depend on. I think that's Carlos Santana. I ain't got nobody that I can depend on. So, but see, these people get into very painful relationships in the first part of their lives, right? Sixth house is enemies. And with the, I mean, most of the time when people have their seventh house ruler in the sixth house, they've gotten divorced at least once or had some bad breakups, right? Right. But relationships get better when we get very clear about what we want and what we're willing to tolerate. And we want people, right? These people will tend to carry the burden, and we want someone who will share the load, not just that load, you know? I mean, that's a joke, I say. Let's look at Dre's her. So Dre's her, all right, first of all, Dre's her is a bit more, well, she's a gibbous too, right? Gibbous, so she's hot and dry, ascendant, cold and dry, moon, excuse me, cold and wet, and hot and dry. So she's still overwhelmingly dry. Season, cold and wet. So she's still mostly cold and dry. So melancholic, maybe a little bit wet, but, you know, more perhaps of a, you know, melancholic type person. So maybe a bit more somber seeming, a bit more of a loner, right? Solitary, stuff like that. What's funny is how opposites tend to attract, and right, and you're more of the she's probably more of the practical person than you are, right? And you're probably more the messy person too. You know, it's a very, very wide thing she's got going between Saturn and the moon, but it probably makes her quite serious. You know, why so serious, partner? And she may have a history of mental illness stuff somewhere, or anxiety or something. But anyway, the seventh house ruler is the moon. And the moon is in Pisces, right? This is someone who's very sensitive, right? They pick up on other people's stuff, which is probably a big reason why they, you know, why they're an introvert, why they keep themselves away from people, because they can, you know, it's not conscious. I hate the word empath. Like, I'm an empath. I feel what you're feeling. So now I can be an asshole, right? And tell you how you feel. You know, the empath stuff, it's a code word for I'm a narcissist. So I hate that. You can, but people are empathetic, right? Meaning they feel, right? They can sort of sense what someone else is feeling. Compassion means to feel with someone, right? So being able, but here when it's a Pisces moon, it's like a mop sucking up water. It's not doing it intentionally. And you can have bad selfish reactions to it too. It can drain your energy. So, you know, these kind of people need a lot of alone time. So now let's look at their synastry grid, or rather bi-wheel. So we have this good amount of stuff here all in the third house. You know, that sort of indicates, ooh, this one's tough. Saturn and Mars here. Ouchie, wow, wow. So, oh gosh, I sound terrible. But, you know, there would probably be some lively discussions here. Probably some lively chats. So, the house person would be able to at least be able to share ideas and values, right? Because Jupiter's here with the planet person, but there might also be a tendency towards bickering or arguments or debates or stuff like that. But it is Sagittarius and Jupiter's here too, you know, so, you know, some sort of shared values or shared ideas. But let's here look at the synastry grid. Oh, and there's seventh house rulers. I can't remember what they were. Seventh house rulers. Mars and the moon. Synastry grad. Synastry grad. So are there aspects between Mars and the moon? No. And that's probably good anyway. Good aspects between Mars and the moon even can be, well, they can be good too. Trines and sextiles, and they can also lead to pregnancy. So that's just something to be aware of. So Mars square Mars right off the bat. Now we know Mars is Dre's seventh house ruler, and it's aspecting her quite a bit. Excuse me. The moon is her seventh house ruler. It's aspecting him a little bit. But the aspects it is making, or this one aspect it's making, is quite interesting. Now it's a 5-degree away conjunction. But still, when the moon, right? We talked about the moon being the security in a relationship. Just a quick rundown. The moon is emotional security, right? Hard aspects will threaten security, whereas good aspects will make us feel secure in each other's company. The sun is our ambition, our intelligence, our personality, and our vitality or energy. Good aspects with this will enliven us and make us feel appreciated, confident, all that sort of stuff. Whereas bad aspects will make us feel belittled, dismissed, small, unappreciated. Mercury, is how we communicate in ideas, right? Good aspects will foster good communication, help us share with each other. Excuse me, to be honest, to talk, get to know each other, cooperate. Bad aspects will indicate lies, bickering, over-criticism, insults, stuff like that. Venus is how we relate, not just sexually and romantically, but in general to people. It's also our aesthetics, right? And our, what we value, what we like. It's the stuff we like, So when we see good aspects, it'll be like, oh, we like the same music. We have the similar tastes, same aesthetics, decorations, timing, sexual desires, Bad aspects will indicate discord, dissonance between any of these things, So, you'll have different sort of taste and aesthetic, or your sexual timing will be off, or one of you is kinky and the other one isn't, stuff like that. So, and Mars is the masculine principle. It's active desire, how we get what we want. It's also aggression, right? So good aspects with Mars will create passion, attraction. Venus is attraction too, but Mars is sort of like that, passionate attraction, right? Activity, cheering each other on, that sort of stuff. Bad aspects will typically be some sort of fighting, some sort of conflict. In worst case, separation, right? Jupiter is it's ideology, values, luck. It could also be excess. It could be pompous, right? And good aspects in synastry, like the trines and the sextiles with Jupiter, they can indicate, they encourage us to be better people, right? Whereas the bad aspects encourage us to act foolish, essentially. Saturn, even the bad aspects of benefics can be fine and good, but they do tend to be foolish. Whether it's over optimism or going to excess, wanting to eat too much or drink too much or whatever. Anyway, so Saturn, tradition, rules, discipline. Good aspects with Saturn, they create longevity in relationships. They keep us together. Saturn fosters marriages when it comes to trines and sextiles. And some conjunctions with malefics can be quite difficult though still. Excuse me. They can also be reliable, consistent relationships and faithful. Whereas Mars, Venus too has a wandering eye. Remember the myth about Aphrodite? There's all kinds of myths about Aphrodite, right? Cheating on Hephaestus. So, anyway, and bad aspects will feel restricting, suffocating, insecure. It can even be abusive in many instances or circumstances. And then there's this thing we have called the 7-year itch with Saturn. Every 7 years is a Saturn square or a quarter turn of Saturn, right? Saturn has close to a 28-year cycle. So there's this thing, this colloquial thing that people call the 7-year itch. I think it exists in many cultures. But essentially, it's the idea that every 7 years we have a crisis in our relationship where we almost get divorced, right? Especially after the first 7 years. I got divorced at 7 years. So, quite interesting stuff. Anyway, and then Uranus, fireworks and fun in relationships. They're often short lived and scandalous, though. You'll see things like illicit affairs. We get naked really quick. There can be kink involved. The good aspects are fun. The bad aspects don't last, or they can cause trouble in our lives. Neptune can be idyllic love and romance, or it can, the fairy tale sort of romance, or it can be lies, deceit, and abuse. The good aspects are romantic, and the bad aspects, they ignore the red flags. We get overly apologetic for our partners when they are very obviously assholes. Finally, Pluto in relationships, it's power, obsession, trauma, right? We'll see sexual hangups and things like that there. The good aspects can be super hot, sensual. They make us go deep together, like, spit your blood into my mouth, mommy, please. Right? And we share our deepest parts of ourselves together. The bad aspects, though, they frequently lead to trauma bonding, which can lead to abuse and control issues. All of a sudden, we get sucked into this whirlwind that we have no clue how it happened, but they can be quite abusive relationships if one isn't careful. I love Plutonian relationships. I want to go deep with someone, but you have to learn when someone's being abusive, right? So anyway, why can't I resize this window? Oh, the window. To the window! To the wall! So anyway, I just mentioned all that so you know what we're talking about. So we'll move on to someone else's, but look at this. Venus trine Venus is so lovely. Oh my gosh. It's a wonderful thing to have. And Venus conjunct the moon too. But look, we got Pluto conjunct the sun. So she's getting shattered by this whole thing. And I'm assuming it's he and she. I'm assuming Dre is a he. I'll say Dre is they. They, Dre. So you see Pluto conjunct the sun. She's probably getting smashed. You are afraid to lose her, right? Like Pluto wants to Pluto's very scared to lose Venus, right? Or the sun or whoever. Lose Persephone, right? Pluto or Hades, whatever you want to call him, gives pomegranate seeds to Venus, right? Or to Persephone to keep her in the underworld. She loved him. She was going to come back, in many versions of the story, but he was just that insecure. So, but she has Pluto trine your Venus, and that's pretty hot. So she's probably a little bit obsessed with you too. And she would probably get really upset if anyone flirted with you. Oh, her Venus is trine your Mars. That's so hot. It's so hot. I mean, that's one of the best aspects for sex, It really, really is. The Venus trine Venus is very similar taste and aesthetics. Gosh, that's a lovely thing to have. But see, this is quite difficult. Saturn conjunct Mars. So she'll try and control you, and you're going to rebel. And there's friction. Mars square Mars isn't very happy. That will be fights and bickering. You know, maybe she's a bit crazy. Or maybe you're the crazy one, actually. So your Uranus is sextile her sun. So you sort of came out of left field, probably being like, like trying to be all smooth with her and flirt with her and stuff. Maybe you wore her down, you know. Anyway, Saturn square Mercury, you feel like, or she feels like you probably shut her down. Like she wants to talk and you don't want to talk. That's how I would typically read that. So, I mean, there's some difficult things here. There's some difficult things here. But anything can work between two people. The other thing I want to mention too is ascendant aspects, but we don't have any really good. Well, there's a pretty good example here, and this is very close. So your Venus is square her ascendant. Very close by 38 minutes. Remember I said Venus is our aesthetic too. It's our taste, what we like. So something about your taste just rub her the wrong way. Maybe she doesn't like the way you dress. Maybe she doesn't like your music. Maybe she wants you to wear nicer clothes or, listen to some pop or some stuff like that. I don't know, but something about your aesthetic just makes her a bit like, turns her off just a little. You see? Let's go to someone else's. We're going to do someone else's. Did I mention, were there any other interesting things I missed? Nope. Well, one thing I want to talk about is, let's bring up someone else's as an example. Because people get so freaked out when they see squares and oppositions. And there's some, there's some reason there's some truth to that. There's some reason to freak out when you see some squares and oppositions. Let's see. What are people saying? Oh, you said you're sorry, skip you? Elizabeth. I'm Slim Shady. Yes, I'm the real Sadie. I don't know if you listen to rap, Dre, but I was a big fan of Brother Lynch Hung growing up and X-Rated. So, yeah, like the gross stuff. Brother Lynch Hung was my favorite. Oh, God. I wish I could say some of it, but I'd probably get banned on here. I was a dead man, walking the say, so every night I hit the J, hit the J, load the AK and post up in the window till come day. Anyway, I'll stop. But he talks about the devil quite a bit and eating people and things like that, which were all really interesting to me when I was a goth kid, so that was my kind of rap. Brother Lin Chung with the fools, yo, never caught slipping. I knew I had to have mine. So I hooked up with my folks. Sorry. Now I got my own back fade. And once you start shooting at fools, you better have your own grave made. Fool named Black. I gotta stop. I love Brother Lynch. This the devil. Anyway, I gotta pick one of you fools to do here. Oh, no time available. No time available. Well, I'm sorry about that. Excuse me. I was a dead girl. Walking, they say, so every night I hit the J, load the AK, and post up in the window till come day. Anyway, hey, I guess I'll do Ear, Sorensen, and their partner. Well, I think I've done Ear's chart before. Is there someone? Larissa. I'll do Ear. I already have Ear stuff going up here. Ear. Eeyore. Eeyore. I know it's not Eeyore, it's Ear, right? Is it Ear? Ear Sorensen. Are you Norwegian or Swedish or Nordic of some sort? Ear. Okay, July the 11th, 1987. Oh, wait, July the 11th. I did the 44th. July the 44th, 1987. July the 44th. July, I know I'm saying it. Okay. I probably have lipstick on my teeth now. Oh my God. Does everyone even know Brother Lin Chung? You better pray when I put the. Oh, I can't say some of that stuff. Like the stuff he talks about in. He talks about some wild stuff. I was a dead girl. What can they say? So every night I hit the J, load the AK, and post up in the window till come day. Anyway, hey, I'll put ears, them, 10, 11, 73. Huh? Okay, 2:48 p.m. Yes, me. Salt Saint Marie, Michigan. Okay, let's see what we're working with here. So ear. So first of all, we can see cold and dry. Mercury is also cold and dry. And anything aspecting, yeah, the sun's hot and dry, aspecting the ascendant. Excuse me. Saturn's cold and dry, aspecting the ascendant. So we got a lot of dryness here with ear. Ear's a bit of a loner.
I'm a loner, Dottie. I'm a rebel.
Has anyone seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure?
I'm a loner, Dottie. I'm a rebel. I know you are, but what am I? I know you are, but what am I? I know you are, but what am I?
No one's going to get Pee Wee Herman because Gen Z doesn't know Pee Wee Herman. But Pee Wee is on Netflix, I think, right? Because I showed my daughter Pee Wee Herman. Pee Wee's Playhouse. I just mentioned that because I don't know. So, ooh, just about a full moon here. Oh, it's a full moon. It's a full moon. So, full moon to disseminating is cold and wet. So that's our first wet thing. So we have cold and dry, and then moon sign, cold and dry, right? Moon phase is cold and wet, and then we have hot and dry here, with the sun, with the what do they call it? The summer. So it's so interesting. Born really close to the solstice on a full moon. Look at that. Quite interesting. And then the seventh. So anyway, so Sorensen here, ear is, mostly cold and dry. So I'm more of a loner, right? And that's why I was saying I'm a loner, Dottie. And you have Saturn square your ascendant like I do. So, part of that also is that you have terrible self-confidence, you know? Saturn square our ascendant, it also can create, mental illness too, but usually chronic illness, like physical illness, you see? So watch out for that. Anyway, but we're talking about the relationship stuff. Now, the seventh house ruler is Jupiter. And Jupiter is over here in Aries in the eighth house. So this ear likes bad girls. Probably bad girls, or, well, I don't know. It shouldn't assume anything about people's genders or sexualities. I'm sorry. But ear likes bad people. And I say bad girls because that's a stereotype, like me, your manic pixie dream girl or Harley Quinn or whatever. And I don't know, what kind of partners you have or non-binary or stuff like that. So I didn't mean to assume, but that's like an archetype, like the manic pixie dream girl or whatever. I can't even speak. I'm still sick. But also people who will scam you for money. So watch out. So you just, does it mean that you can't have relationships or anything like that? Jupiter is not poorly dignified or anything. And Jupiter, right, isn't super poorly aspected by anything. So I guess you could say there's an out of sign
There's an out of sign square, or you could say there's a trine by sign between Jupiter. Either way, Jupiter is what's called overcoming Mars, right? Jupiter's in a superior position, so the bad stuff that Mars would typically do, Jupiter's sort of softening it a little bit. So maybe you do have mental health stuff that was going on, and Jupiter makes it a little bit more manageable. Maybe it's neurodivergence. I don't know. But with a Capricorn moon, that could be a thing. So Jupiter's not bad, but you would like scandalous people. You like fast people, right? You'd like, or it's someone who can share trauma with you, or someone you can open up with because you're so scared to open up, probably. Someone you can bleed with and tell your traumas to. But you got to watch out for, because it would attract you to darker people too, and that's fine, and it can be fine. It can also lead to people that would use you. And the reason why I say use you for money is because the eighth house is other people's money. So, people who, you might spend a bunch of money on and you got nothing to show for it or whatever. Or, people who ask you for money or loans or ask you to spend money on them or whatever. Or people who feel obligated all of a sudden to pay off their debts or, oops, that's not good. This sound is not good. I should probably not be making all these noises. But I can't help it. It's like I got 3 toys at once. You can tell how Gemini I am. Well, air, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. But anyway, and ear has the Saturn in the 4th house, retrograde. So not good times with dad and or mom. Oh, excuse me. Right, we want to look out for some of that baggage too with people, because we manifest it in relationships. Now, ears person, cold and dry, cold and dry, cold and dry, cold and dry, cold and dry. Hot and dry, cold and dry, cold and dry, cold and dry, hot and dry, with Mars there aspecting. Anyone else aspecting? Saturn's so wide, or sorry, Sun's so wide. Saturn aspecting, I guess. Cold and dry again. Moon, hot and dry. Moon phase, hot and dry. And then season, cold and wet. So mostly cold and dry. So you're both sort of cold and dry. Maybe you're both sort of bookish people, sort of bookwormy, both nerdy, intelligent people. I don't mean nerdy as like a pejorative, like a nerd. I just mean like, you know what I mean? Just sort of book it. I have these images in my head. Maybe you're both neurodivergent. Oh my gosh, like 2 neurodivergent people together. That's so cute. I mean, it happens all the time. And did you know there's some sort of link between autism and gender dysphoria or being transgender or non-binary? 15% of autistic people report being non-binary. That's so wild. And I guess they said being transgender makes you 6 times more likely to be autistic, or the other. I don't remember which way it went. But anyway, so it's interesting. Gender nonconformity and autism have a big link. So I should probably go down. You heard Lar. Give you all the debauchery. If I want you for teaching material, this is a shit show. Shit show. Ear. Autistic pride. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so ear, I don't know if you or your partner have any neurodivergence, but I would expect either that or depression. Although sometimes Mercury stuff we see. Anyway, I shouldn't get so stuck on that. Seventh house ruler is the moon, and the moon in the fourth house in Aries. So, well, fourth house person. So your person wants someone that they can be really intimate with, someone that feels like family, right? Someone that can relate to their family, that can be part of their family, be friends with their family, right? Who feels like family. They want someone they can relax with, be like, ugh. Someone they can unbuckle their belt around and feel safe with. I shouldn't be spinning this so much. I mean, this make noise too. You know, that makes noise. Welcome to the shit show is my rave fam slogan. I was a raver back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Hard time with your dad and mom early in life. They're addicts. Yeah, well, that's the 12th house stuff we were talking about, you know? 12th house. Wait, who rules your fourth? Oh, Jupiter. Oh, and Jupiter in the 8th house. You see, the 8th house is also criminal activity. So you're both bookwormy and you suppose intelligent. Thank you for doing this live. You really appreciate the information. Oh, thank you for saying that. Well, you're just trying to butter me up so I do your chart, aren't you? No, I'm kidding. See, I'm paranoid. I'm paranoid. I I heard the quote that every accusation is a confession, and I posted it the other day. But of course, not every accusation is a confession. You know, and for those of us that have been through trauma and stuff, like we accuse everyone. Like you're trying to, you know, and especially for people who've been through S, you know what I mean by S. Those of us who've been through S word assault, right? Anyway, noises aren't that loud. Okay, cool. I just hope the hum in the background. I think it's the hum from the computer. Anyway, so oh yeah, I was talking about criminal activity in the 8th house. So you see drug dealers or addicts and stuff. But addiction itself often shows up in the 12th house. So well, the sun as the father ruling the 12th house is quite interesting. Well, I don't want to stick on that. We want to look at synastry. So let's look at the grid. But we know that the 7th house ruler is, we got Jupiter and the moon. Jupiter and the moon, yes, depression to an anxiety. He and you both ADD. Yeah, sometimes it's an observation, not an accusation. It depends on the intention, Lizzie, and only you know your intention, you know? So it's hard to be comfortable after that type of trauma. Yeah, I'm a survivor. I'm a survivor. I'm not gonna give up. Anyway, but yeah, I'm a survivor. I think I was 19 or 20. Excuse me. So, yeah, and that messes you up, doesn't it? I've had some pretty severe traumas. I can't say the other S word, you know, about unliving yourself, but my dad unlived himself when I was around the same age. And yeah, and let's just say my mom sort of defined how my relationships would go till I was 38. Anyway, but you see how the conditioning, right? You see how that conditioning affects us. Mars rules their 4th house. Mars in the 5th house. So maybe their parent, and Mars isn't happy. So difficult time with dad too. But maybe their parent was a philanderer or slept around or left early on or whatever. But you'll see people who cheated on their parents or whatever. Often with that. Synastry grid. Boom. So we talked about the moon, right? The moon is one of the most important things because that's our unconscious sense of security, right? Feeling at ease with each other. And right, the sun squared the moon can be a little bit challenging, right? Let's see, do we have any moon Jupiter aspects? Moon Jupiter. Ooh, I mean, there's a conjunction here at 6 degrees away, but still. See, when you see aspects between the seventh house rulers, it's significant. Now, it's his moon, which is her seventh house ruler, and excuse me, her Jupiter. Do we have her moon doing anything to his Jupiter? No, that would have been cool. But still, that's sort of interesting. Now, but in the moon, right, is our sense of unconscious security. So when Jupiter is conjunct, that means she pumps you up, right? You know, she could make you feel joyful. Or I keep saying she. I'm so sorry. He or them. God, why do I keep doing that? I'm so sorry. That is my fault. I'm just loop de loop and I'm bad. So anyway, but they would probably pump you up, make you feel a bit more confident, make you feel just joyful or satisfied or happy inside, you know. There would be, you know, it's a wider orb, so it's not the most potent thing. Oh gosh, the most potent thing. There's a couple really close aspects here. The closest one I see so far is your Mars trine their Venus. Okay. No, I know. I just have to apologize. But your Mars trine their Venus. So, I mean, that makes for wonderful sex. You know, and it's probably frequent. The thing you just have to watch out for is you got to make it interesting. You know, because it can get formulaic after a while. And you might get, I mean, it's not like sex is never wonderful, but you don't want to get to the point where it's just like, okay, I'm going to come. You're like, let's do 5-minute quickie and come and get it over with. I mean, every marriage eventually gets to a little bit of that, but, you know, I mean, I had Mars and Venus trine in one of my marriages, and it just, yeah, it got very formulaic. I was into kink, and it wasn't until I had like a Mars opposition square thing with someone that, you know, I got to explore that more. So, like I said, it can be wonderful, you know, just keep it interesting is all. And their Mercury is touching you at 3 spots over here, Sun, Mercury, and Venus. So there's a potential there for great communication, great conversations, great understanding. The way they talk, their ideas, everything, you find them intelligent probably, and they find you intelligent. I know you're trying to be modest and all that earlier, but this is sort of an intellectual liaison association. I mean, even Pluto here, your Pluto conjunct their Mercury. You know, there's a sapiosexual quality where there's an obsession over their ideas, or, you know, maybe they write or maybe they speak. Something about their mind, you know, envelops you or attracts you. And then their Mars touches you in a bunch of places. So something about their passion. Oh, and your Sun touches them in a bunch of places. Would you consider synastry an opportunity to understand how your person's love language? Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, first of all, temperament is a big thing about that. We talked about temperament early on here, right? So the love language of a wet person is going to be physical touch, right? Or quality time. Or, you know, they're going to want to spend more time. It's going to be more intimate. A dry person is going to be more, you know, acts of service, perhaps. Or, what are the other ones? Sorry, acts of service. Gift giving is more of a dry thing, for sure. It's also more of an earth thing, or more of a, what? More of a cold thing. right? Gift giving, cold and dry, probably. Um, Acts of service to me would be cold and wet, right? Um, uh, Physical touch would be hot and wet to me. I don't think any of them would be hot and dry, but um, uh, hot and wet. Physical touch. Oh, words of encouragement. Words of encouragement might be hot and dry? No. Would it be hot and dry? I guess words of encouragement would be hot and wet too, to me. So I don't see any room for hot and dry. Well, you think about hot and dry as separating too. But you can sort of see, I mean, love languages for hot and dry people. I'd probably say words of encouragement, yeah. And probably acts of service. You know, those would be good for a hot and dry person. Would love for you to do your synastry since you have a Scorpio moon, he's a Libra moon. Fine, Larissa, I'll look at yours next. I think I started to say Larissa earlier. Two more aspects here. I have to mention this because this is a Plutonian relationship. And you are somewhat Plutonian here, but your partner's even more so. Their Pluto square your Mercury, square your Venus, and sextile your Mars. So they might feel like they are a bit dominating. Oh, your Pluto's opposite their Mars too. So this is difficult. I mean, there's a lot of room for violent eruptions and very bad arguments. So just watch out for that. But it is a very obsessive relationship. They would not take kindly to you flirting with anyone else. They wouldn't even probably like you laughing at someone else's jokes. They might make you feel very attractive on the one hand, and yet they might make you feel suffocated. So just watch out for that sort of stuff. Now, their Saturn is conjunct your Venus, so this does have the potential to be like a marriage. And your Saturn is trine their moon and sextile their sun. So yeah, something like a marriage. Oh, and the ascendant, right? Aspects to the ascendant can be very binding because to me, the ascendant is like the soul, you know, the life direction, or the dharma, rather. You see? Now, Venus opposite the ascendant is also, you know, they have much different taste than you, or there's something about their taste you don't like. Excuse me. Or vice versa. Something about ideas that are probably adversarial too. A little bit. Arguing. I don't know. There's an ideological dispute, perhaps. Anyway, I got to move on to someone else's. We got to do Larissa. You're running your farm chores as you're listening. Your goats say, I say, meh. Christine, I'll get to you after Larissa. I'll do Larissa, then Christina. Meh. My goats. Meh. Meh. I used to watch, you know, Saturday Night Live, when Jim Brewer used to do Goat Boy. And he'd do I Love the 80s, or Remember the 80s, and he was Goat Boy. So, anyway, no one remembers Goat Boy, do they? Who's truly brilliant? Your partner's truly brilliant? My voice is done. I hate when I do the man voice. I really hate it. Some assholes can be like,
You always do the man voice. You're a man. You can't be a woman.
dumbass, read up on being medical science. Gender and sex are two different things. Both are based a lot in biology. Even gender identity, it's just a separate thing and we don't even totally understand it. But, you know, you can't tell this to spiritual people though, because when you go into the physiological part of consciousness, they go crazy. They go crazy. Like when you talk about epiphenomenon of the brain. Anyway, but you see how all this is tied together. We're going to go on to Larissa. Larissa explains it all. Makes me think of LaRusso. Daniel LaRusso. You're dead, LaRusso! I'm gonna get you, LaRusso! You know, Karate Kid. Sweep the leg. What? You got a problem with that? No, Sensei. Where the hell is Larissa? Larissa, can you put your stuff down here again? Oh, I'm looking. Larissa explains it all. Oh, here we go. I found yours, Larissa. 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 I'm gonna start saving your guys' stuff because I see my friends coming back. I see friends returning. So Larissa is from Old Zealand. Old Zealand. I have friends in Auckland. I have people in Auckland. It's so funny. Eggs! We eat eggs! And have seeks. They don't have sex. They have seeks. We have seeks with eggs. They have sex with eggs. I'm sorry. I used to love Flight of the Conchords. I know I'm just being so like stereotypical right now and like American, but I'm sorry. Can't help it. Americans are so bad when we talk about other people's countries. It's the Commonwealth though. Who cares, right? Taronga, New Zealand. Did I get it? Yeah. Seeks, eggs. One of my favorite Flight of the Conchords bits was when they did David Bowie. And dude's like, Jermaine, because one of the guys' name was Jermaine. He's like, I'm not Jermaine. I'm David Bowie. Anyway. I'm David Bowie. Hoggle, what is that plastic thing round your wrist? Turn back, Sarah. I can't do David Bowie. Turn back, Sarah. Hoggle, if she kisses you, I will turn you into a prince. Prince of the land of stench. Sarah, bow down and worship me, and I will be your slave. What a toxic movie, you know? So funny. It really is. And a bunch of us in the 80s grew up on that, and that's how we learned to have relationships. No wonder so many of us are into kink, and we're all 11:58 p.m. That's my birth time. This person, he's got my birth time. And he's also born in Taronga. I think that's how you say it. Taronga. Larissa explains it all. Larissa explains it all. Larissa. So, well, hot and wet, Mercury, cold and dry, aspects, the moon, cold and wet. So we have hot and wet, cold and dry, cold and wet. Moon phase is a new moon. So that's hot and wet. So hot and wet, cold and dry, cold and wet, hot and wet. So hot and wet is still winning. And then, oh wait, Saturn is cold and dry. So there's another cold and dry. So we're pretty even here though. So we're pretty even here. What season? Cold and wet. I don't know. So we're leaning a bit. Yeah, we're pretty even. We're pretty even. You know, so on the one hand though, you probably, with that 7th house Venus and all the stuff on the western half of your chart here, you're going to be more relational and relationship oriented. So you'll be more wet. So I would still lean on the wet side for you. Cold, cold, cold. And probably a little bit more cold. A little bit more hard to get going. Now you're probably like, oh, I have a yod. But no, you don't. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, you don't. And I don't really look at yacht. I don't play with aspect patterns anymore. I did all that shit for years. And I don't really care. You know, it's like we have constellations. Why do we need aspect patterns? Like someone already looked at the sky and said, "Oh, look, that's a fish and that's a crab and that's twins." We don't need to do it in the chart like, "Oh, there's a finger of God. Oh, there's a kite. Look, here's a pentagon." You know? Here's a parallelogram. If I trace this way, that could be a dodecahedron. You know? I've got an occult octagon. I've got a paranormal parallelogram. You know, I'm just being a bitch. I've got a rectangle. A mystic rectangle. Like, fool, you're just high and looking at trines and sextiles, yo. Shut the F up with that nonsense. Oh, you got Chiron conjunct your sun like I do. You're very accustomed to pain, and Mars in your 4th house. So dad probably wasn't a very nice person. Perhaps had a bad temper. Perhaps dad had a bad temper. Bad dad. Bad dad, bad temper. Where's Mercury? Mercury tells about dad. Now, I shouldn't just be focused on dad. But see, Mars is square Mercury. What? Oh, well, no, that's such a wide orb. But still, they're square. Yeah, they're square. They're square. Anyway, we should be looking at the 7th house ruler, though. So 7th house ruler is Jupiter, up in Pisces, well dignified. So, I mean, I expect you. 1998? Well, you're still quite young, Larissa. I was listening to one of my Australian teachers earlier, and structure, you know, grandmother. Sorry. What else? What was it? Progressions. I can't remember what else she was saying something really interesting. I can't remember, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about with Aussies. Excuse me. So, but a well-dignified Jupiter should yield some luck in relationships. You know, I know Mercury's not happy in your 7th house. You know, and Pluto's in your 7th house, of course, conjunct Venus. So you're probably a bit creepy and obsessive when it comes to relationships, and you might be a bit codependent. You know, you don't let go very easily. But I would expect you to sort of luck out with a partner or have a long-term partner that, like a long-term marriage or something. You know? I'd expect something positive from relationships. Watch, you're going to tell me like, no, you know, he married my sister, you know, or took my dog. I don't know. Married my sister and took my dog. And the ice cube trays. Wait, if you can't get to our synastry chart, could you give a quick explanation of Mercury square Mercury? Mercury square Mercury? It's a clash of ideas. It's different communication styles. You know, timing is off. One person says, hey, we need to talk. Not now. I'm busy. I'm doing something. Do we have to talk now? Let's talk later. Now the other person wants to talk. Now I can't talk, right? There's something about our timing that's off. We misunderstand each other, perhaps. You know? I didn't say that. I didn't say that. That's what I heard. You did say that. No, I didn't. That's not what I was thinking. This wasn't my intention. You see, misunderstandings. But my grandmother. Aussies, yeah. I was trying to remember. And I was listening to Kelly Surtees earlier, too. Anyway. I like to... But yeah, that's Mercury square Mercury. The opposition's the worst, though. That's actually cool, especially what you said with the autism. Yeah, you could go look it up. All right, let me show you an interesting article. Autism, transgender. Here we go. People who are transgender or non-binary are likely to be autistic. One large study found that it's 3 to 6 times more common. Researchers, so this is from NPR, but there's another study I found. where it said that 15% of of autistic people. Um, I hate this Windows bullshit. Why can't you just fucking work? Do it. Work it. Makes sense. Makes sense. Stupid Windows making me pissed. Okay. So anyway, chat. So back to this. So Larissa's person here. So there's seventh house where, well, okay, cold and dry, cold and dry. Um, cold and dry, cold and dry. Anything aspecting? No. No. Hello, hello. Aquarius rising. Their rising sign is exactly conjunct mine. Well, mine's 47. Theirs is 44. Is mine 47? Is it mine 47? Or is it 54? No, mine's 54. 54. So mine's 10 minutes away from his. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Moon phase. Gibbous, hot and dry. So cold and dry, cold and dry. Wait, no, sorry. Hot and wet, cold and dry, hot and dry. So we're mostly dry and we're mostly hot. And then hot and wet and hot and dry. No, hot and wet. Sorry, hot and wet. So mostly hot and wet, just barely. So he's probably the more extroverted one, no? Yeah. Well, you both can be kind of fun, right? I mean, you're both kind of combinations of multiple types. I'd say he leans hot and wet, though. More personable, more fun, outgoing, social. And he's a Libra moon, right? Seventh house ruler's the sun, of course. And the sun is exalted in Aries. So he probably has good luck with relationships, too. Or, Mars in the seventh house, probably break up somewhere, I don't know. But they probably luck out with a long-term partner at some point. So anything else bad? Is anything bad happening to the sun? Saturn's not doing anything. You could say that there's a trine between Mars and the sun, but it's wide, and the sun's overcoming Mars. They're both hot and dry. It's funny because Aquarius rising people, it seems like, are attracted to Leos, number one, and then hot and dry people. Hot and dry mamas. Tough mamas, Although I like cold mamas too. So, but anyway, let's see how the Synastry grid goes. So we're going to look for, sun aspects especially. And then she was Jupiter aspects. So, somebody's coming. Oh, wait, no. No. Somebody's coming. Larissa and Larissa's guy. And then we'll do what was her name? I'm so sorry. Christina B. Yeah. Oh. Well, Larissa's Jupiter and his sun. So, one thing that's interesting is your Saturn is conjunct his seventh house ruler. Saturn, and conjunct his Mercury. So this sort of bodes well for a long-term thing. Worst case scenario, the sun person can feel suffocated in some ways, but typically I'd see this as good for marriage. You might be a stabilizing influence to this person. Although your Saturn is square their ascendant. So there's something difficult about this. There's something about There's something about his passion in life or his purpose that perhaps you seem at odds with, or maybe I don't, there's something about your rules, something about your structure that seems like it's clipping his wings a little. I don't know. That's just what it looks like. Some difficult aspects I see. Well, first of all, he's obsessed with you, and he would be scared of losing you. I mean, you're a little obsessed about him too. You have your Pluto sextile his moon, right? Now, Moon Pluto things are very deep. We grow deep roots into each other. And even the hard aspects, we go very deep together. But it's very hard to break up. And, excuse me. And these relationships they can get quite toxic if we're not careful, if we don't have good communication, you know? And luckily, your Mercury touches him all over the place, right? So trine the Sun, square Venus, trine Mars. So you have a very active communication life together. You probably do more of the talking, right? But you probably feel that your ideas are appreciated for the most part. Maybe you have different types of ideas or different ideologies, perhaps, or speak different languages. I don't know. Something about the way you talk. Something about the way you talk is different from, I don't know. Maybe you have an accent. One of you has I don't know. You're both born in the same place, though. You're both from Old Zealand. So I don't know. See, there's good Saturn. Well, there's difficult Saturn stuff, though. So this is one of the most difficult aspects in Synastry. His Saturn is opposite your Mars. So oftentimes what that would manifest as the Saturn person closing their jaws around the Mars person. And then the Mars person is like, no! Right? You know, like Hulk. Like, ah! And the Saturn person, right, is trying to sort of contain the situation or contain the Mars person. The Mars person doesn't want to be contained or controlled. The Mars person doesn't want rules. So you just have to be aware of this because you're the Mars person here. Okay? Is Venus opposite your Mars? So you probably are the person who initiates the sexual stuff. Usually the Mars person is the pursuer, right? The chaser. I don't mean like trans chasers that come after me. I mean, you know, the person who's doing the pursuit. The mouse who's chasing the pussy. Right? That makes sense? Anyway. But that Saturn thing's really tough. His Pluto conjunct your moon and sun. This is life-changing, this relationship. Neither of you are the same. But their breakups would not be easy. I'm sure the sex is wonderful. Pluto conjunct your Venus. Oh, I love that in Synastry. It can be quite kinky. Can also be quite passionate. You know, it can be quite dark a little bit. You know, I mean like really dark. I don't mean, last time we talked about Machine Gun Kelly and Megan Fox, and that was more like on display. When I talk about like a real dark kind of sexual thing, I mean, you're not showing off, right? Like that's something that you keep to yourself. You don't want to be known for those shenanigans. But it's really hot. I love that aspect. It's just there's so much other difficult stuff. Oh, and then the Neptune stuff. So lies. Your Neptune square his Mercury. The Mercury person might be lying, or maybe it's you being deceptive, right? Neptune tries to be all things to all people. I call it the shape of water, right? It tries to fill whatever glass it's in. Sometimes that can be good and adaptive or relatable, and sometimes that can just be straight up lying and deceptive. So anyway, let's look at, but there's great stuff too, right? Talks about, oh, Venus trine the sun. That's lovely, right? So your sense of intelligence, your sense of personality, your sense of direction, ambition, right? All that's going to, be congruent with their aesthetic, right? Their sense of love, of relationship, what they like, what they don't like. So you see, there's going to be an affinity here in general. You're going to make them feel beautiful, and they're going to make you, or rather, they're going to make you feel beautiful, and you're going to make them feel confident and visible and smart and all these sorts of solar things. And they're going to put their Venusian qualities on you, right? Whereas you make them feel seen, they make you feel beautiful or attractive in some way. So, but that's all lovely stuff. Let's move on. Let's move on.org. Why don't I have a donation button? Because YouTube hasn't let me have one yet. But please use my PayPal. It should be in the... If you look at the description on there, all my other information is on here. Am I posting my clips on TikTok? Anyway, I gotta post clips on TikTok too. But yes, I should have a donation button. But my Patreon is down below. Where's Christina B's stuff? Christina Basie. But you could please go to my PayPal, paypal.me/, all one word, Frank Fortune's Fool. That I started that before I came out. Whereas, and then I do have a Patreon, but it's all in the description. It's all in the description. Where the fudge is Christina B? Christina B. I don't see Christina B. Yes, me. I don't see Christina B. Where's your stuff, Christina B? Oh, that's you there. Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you for making it so I don't have to scroll up. Yay. Because otherwise, it's just so tedious trying to look everywhere. 9/26/81. And I'm getting hungry. I'm going hungry. I'm going hungry. I love Chris Cornell so much. I was the biggest Smashing Pumpkins fan. I still am. Billy Corgan was my guitar hero. He still is. But he's such an asshole. Like he had this rivalry with Sal. He said Soundgarden sucked. He's such a piece of garbage. Such a jerk. He's a Pisces with Gemini rising and Pluto conjunct his ascendant, right? Or no, Virgo rising, right? Pisces with Virgo rising and Gemini moon. I think it's Virgo rising. But anyway, he's a jerk. 1:04 p.m. Panorama City. Panorama. At least from what I've seen about him, And then he's friends with Marilyn Manson, renowned abuser. Alleged abuser. I heard he's countersuing Evan Rachel Wood, and the other two people settled out of court. Panorama City, Los Angeles. Wait, Were you born in Los Angeles or Panorama City? Let's just say Los Angeles. Or is that actually an incorporated city? Okay, I guess it is. Fine then, we'll do that. I haven't heard. I'm from San Diego originally, and I hadn't heard of Panorama City. And I used to party in LA all the time. I was a raver. All of our rave stuff was in LA. Although I usually ended up there not knowing where I was. So, well, kind of. Not knowing what it was, and we'll continue singing it forever just because this is the song that doesn't end. And it goes on and on, my friend. Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was, and they'll continue singing it forever just because this is the song that doesn't end. Yes, it goes on and on, my friend. Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was, and they'll continue singing it forever just because this is Christina's something that never ends. Near Burbank. I know Burbank. You're a Valley girl. Oh my goodness. Well, like I said, I'm from San Diego, so we can relate. We can relate. Valley girl. I love Clueless. It's one of my favorite movies. She's like, wait. Wait, no, the dad says to her, where you calling from? Abu Dhabi or something like that. And she's like, is that in the valley? Anyway, sorry. Girly, as far as I'm concerned, I'm the messiah of the DMV. I love that part. Anyway. She's a total Monet, Like, from back up, she looks fine, but up close, she's a total mess. I know I love Clueless. One of my favorite movies. One of my favorite movies. And I love Brittany Murphy. Oh my God, I love Brittany Murphy. Oh, Brittany Murphy. God bless. Your partner and I love raving out together. The coolest grimy club ever. Yeah, I was in so many cuddle puddles. I took more pills than Robert Downey Jr. That's probably a bad joke, but if you have time after Christina's chart, let's see how far we make it. I mean, I know everyone gets mad at me for talking and stuff, but that's what makes this fun. If I was like,
Okay, what after where's the sun? There's the riser. This. Next chart. Next chart.
I don't do that shit. Don't expect that from me because that's not my style. I have to talk and I have to be interesting to myself. Otherwise, I get bored. If I'm not interested, then this won't work. I have to be interested. For your birthday this last Friday is such a good time. Your partner. Oh, yeah. Forever just because this is the song that does. Anyway, I'll stop that. Oh, but Christina is a balsamic moon. Balsamic, like balsamic dressing. You know what balsamic means? It just means dark. It means dark. So I gotta see if talking closer to this makes the white noise go away. But then you can hear my S's. But you see, this is called the dark moon. The Dark Moon. The Mysteries of the Dark Moon. That's a book by Demetra George. The Mysteries of the Dark Moon. Very good book that I haven't read. But I heard some other people talking about it. But the balsamic moon phase, right? These are the people that are just obliterating everything. It's the ultimate sort of death phase. It's very melancholic and it can be, Dane Rudyard likened each of the moon phases to the life cycles of plants. Oh, God. These are people who seem old, who seem reflective. I don't mean old as in visually old. I mean, they seem sort of, sad and wise, or maybe perhaps a bit introverted, or, they have that stare, 1,000-yard stare. Right? You know, they seem like they're always contemplating something or into something. You know, and it can be quite difficult for these people because they can be sort of pessimist. You know, it's the destructive sort of energy. These people have turned away and they're looking ahead bit by bit. So, but it's the cold and dry phase, right? So we have hot and dry, we have hot and wet, we have anything aspecting the ascendant, Pluto's not anything. Oh, hot and wet again. So we have hot and dry, hot and dry, hot and wet, hot and wet. Then we have cold and dry. And we have cold and dry. And we have cold and wet. Hot and dry. So there's mostly wet here, right? Just slightly mostly wet. Slightly mostly wet, right? AC hot and dry, Jupiter hot and wet, Jupe hot wet. See, making a little grid here is always helpful. And then the moon sign Virgo. Cold and dry. Sorry, cold and dry. And then it's a dark moon, which is cold and dry. And it's fall, which is cold and wet. Well, I guess the fall technically started, right? Later in October. Oh, I guess that's fall there. So cold and wet. So we've got even, right? We have even Steven. Even, Steven. I hate when it's even Steven. Right? But we have most of the planets on the eastern half. So I would say you're more more dry, rather. And, I'd say you're hot and dry. That's what I'd say mostly. 7th house ruler. Any big baggage, I think.
Nobody knows the trouble I see. Nobody knows the sorrow.
I don't know what that's from. I just remember from Spaceballs. Wow. 1st house. Someone's very important or feels that they're very important. Exalted Jupiter conjunct the ascendant. Ooh la la, look at you. But not a happy Mars ruling the 10th house. Either bad reputation or not very successful or just straight up lazy or hard to find life direction. It's like looking out the windows. Gotta be a job out there somewhere. Or just maybe not. I don't know. But very confident. So very confident. Probably a bit clingy too. Now, this person there's Saturn in the 7th house, and Saturn's the 7th house ruler. So this is quite interesting because these people can be very, very independent. Well, I mean, look at the temperament. It's cold and wet. The moon is cold and wet. And then, okay, here we go. Oops, I don't want that. So, Cancer. That's what she says. Kelly. Cancer, the sign of Cancer. Cancer. My grandmother's a Cancer. It's just Aussies. You know Aussies? I'm making fun of Old Zealand too. Americans sound ridiculous. The only reason we don't notice it is because our TV sounds like us. And so we think the rest of the world sounds like us too. You know? Except for England. But the rest of the world's supposed to sound like us. And then Americans do the goofiest English accents, me included. It's either like, right, oh, you know, like, what was that movie? Clockwork Orange, you know? A little bit of the ultra violence there, my druggies, right? And then there's like Boris Johnson, which is like, well, Parliament today, we had to take the votes on, today in the House of Commons, the Prime Minister, that sort of stuff. Or Charles, Prince Charles, yes, the television, yes, quite right. Cancer is cold and wet. I shouldn't. Moon is cold and wet. Moon is cold and wet. And then anything aspecting the ascendants. Well, Saturn's opposite the ascendant. That's not fun for him or them or whoever this person is. So they have terrible self-confidence and yet maybe a little bit of arrogance. But there's something very insecure about this person deep down. And maybe they do have chronic illness, I don't know. But they don't know their own boundaries. And yet at the same time, they're learning how to relate to people, right? They're not used to relating to others, right? It's like they don't want to let anyone in. It's like Darth Vader. I'll do it myself. I don't want to rely on anyone. I don't want anyone to do it for me. I don't want anyone to hold anything over my head. You know? Like I don't want any entangled alliances or cumbersome entanglements. If I just do it myself, people can leave me alone and I'll leave them alone. You know, that's typically the Saturn thing. But at the same time, what? Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, and look at this person's moon phase is like you're balsamic, you're dark moon, and they're a crescent. You know, it's hot and wet. And there's something really sort of innocent about a crescent moon phase, you know, maybe even childlike. You know, maybe this person seems like a little boy or a little girl or whatever. And like, I mean, the same sort of stupidness, but the same sort of, you know, excitement too. You know, they might whine and complain, but at the same time they have this, you know, this endearing sense of wonder or fun, maybe. I don't know if this person's fun. But you know what I'm saying. Maybe they just didn't ever have to worry about money so much, you know? Like they just didn't have to worry about money. And so they got to be irresponsible. And then at some point they have to start learning to be responsible. They might get a bad reputation. This person has to learn how to handle money on their or other people's money or other people's resources. It could be, like I'm looking at the North Node, it could be death or trauma, stuff like that. But I typically think of money. Money, money, money. The best things in life are free. But you can give them to the birds and bees. I want the money. I want the money. Let's see the synastry, honey. I want the money, honey, synastry, sonny. No. Is this lump out of my head? I think so. So Christina's going across here. Remember, I always tend to look at the moon first because that's like, you know, I already talked about what the moon is, but I look at it first because, you know, if we don't feel safe, God, like if we're always walking on eggshells, and I've done that before for years, doesn't work. So one thing right off the bat, we talked about moon square Venus before, but Venus person is afraid to lose moon person, right? Moon person feels like Venus person's very attractive and doesn't want to lose them, right? The moon square Venus, moon person is like, oh my gosh, they're gonna find someone better, smarter, cuter, you know. Their moon conjunct your Mars, that can be good for having children, you know. I mean, it can be very sexual, but it's also sort of like impregnating, you know. The connection is made, you know. So I don't know if any of that's like too crude for YouTube. I don't know what I'm allowed to do and not allowed to do. I guess we'll see if I get in trouble. Let's look at the bad stuff. I mean, there's no Saturn stuff. Although there's Saturn. Oh, no, what? Oh. Although their Saturn is trine your moon. That's kind of good for longevity. Maybe they make you feel safe. I don't know. But that's good for a marriage, perhaps. I mean, it's the only Saturn aspect you have. I mean, there's Saturn square Jupiter. I wouldn't. What are your seventh house rulers again? Mercury and Saturn. 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 Saturn. So their Saturn is very important. So you'd want to see some aspects from their Saturn. And you'd want to see some aspects from your Mercury. So, interestingly enough, his seventh house ruler trines your moon, makes a trine to your moon. And your seventh house ruler makes a trine to his Venus, which is very lovely. So there are opportunities for good communication, shared aesthetic, sharing ideas, but there's also a lot of room for misunderstanding as well, you know. So his Mercury square your Venus. You don't have to, it's not necessarily lying, but it can be. It can be. Or it can just be you don't like the way he talks, or maybe he cusses a lot or something like that. I don't know. Or I keep saying he, but I don't know. There might be capacity for bickering, little fights or debates. I didn't do that. Yes, you did. I never do that. You always do that. Why do you do that? I don't do. That's not what I meant. I didn't do that. Yes, you did do that. But that's not what I did. It's not what I said. It is. I know what you meant. No, you don't know what I meant. Like this kind of stuff. So his Venus square your sun. There's something about the look. Something about your look that he criticizes. Maybe he makes fun of something that you wear or the way you look in some way. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. I want to just, oh, this one's tough. I'm not going to lie, darling. This one's a really hard one. His Pluto square your Mars, and it's very tight. It's 29 minutes. So this is an aspect where he's probably a little bit more obsessive than you are. Probably a little bit more obsessive than you are. Although you might. See, your Venus is trying his ascendant. And this is like typically like love at first sight kind of shit. You'd find him very attractive. He'd probably find you very attractive too. You know? So, but those aspects of, you know, the moon, the sun, Venus, those three aspecting the ascendant by a conjunction trine sextile, those are very, very potent for bringing people together. The square and the opposition can be too, but over time they can grow apart, grow to strain, or grow like schisms, fights, bickering, you know, stuff like that. One is confusing to you, playing cat and mouse. Well, yeah, I mean, look, you know, we've got these Venus squares here. Okay, this is the hard part. This is what I was saying. Pluto square Mars. So the Mars person, Do I have an example? There's a meme I made of this where it's from Peter Pan. It's the crocodile, you know? And Captain Hook is like trying to break out of the jaws. Captain Hook's like the Mars person trying to break out of the jaws. And Pluto's like the crocodile trying to hold you in, right? Pluto, remember the Persephone Hades myth? You know, Persephone says, yo, dude, I love you. I'm coming back. But I got to go to the surface because my mom's killing people with perpetual winter. So, like, I'll be back. I love you. And he's like, okay, I trust you. So here's these pomegranate seeds. You know? And those are what effectively tied Persephone to the underworld, right? As far as I know from the story, she was going to come back, but, you know, because they grew to love each other, for instance, or in actuality, rather. And probably had the most constructive relationship of the whole Greek pantheon. You know, they were all awful, awful, awful people, but some more so than others. So anyway, the whole point of that myth is that Pluto doesn't want to lose Persephone, right? So they're going to do everything they can to try and arrange stuff to keep them. And they'll try to impress them. They might even lie. They might be disingenuous. I don't know, but they want to hold on. And the Mars person wants their freedom. And maybe their freedom makes the Pluto person feel uncomfortable. Maybe they're jealous. Maybe they're controlling. You'll see a lot of Pluto and Saturn stuff in dominance and submission relationships. And having been, you know, on the D side, a dominant in a relationship before, you know, I can tell you from people that I've met that some of them are just abusive, right? Like, you know, real dominance or whatever. It's supposed to be about love and care. But you see all the memes about dominance too. It's, you know, glorifying being jealous. I'm sorry, but being jealous isn't a healthy thing. You know, the whole devotion side and worship side of it is very interesting to me, but glorifying toxic traits isn't necessarily helpful or part of BDSM. You know, role playing and stuff like that's fun, but when you actually start, you know, I mean, it's got to be consensual, but there's areas when it gets way too much. You know what I'm saying? So I just mention all that because that's what it can feel like when the Pluto person is trying to dominate a Mars person. So just be aware of that because you could get stifled or feel creepy or whatever. You know? Anyway, that's all quite interesting. That's all quite interesting. Anyway, I hope lots of people liked the stream and streamed the like and liked the smash and smashed my face. We went from 20-some viewers down to 5, so thank you to all the people who stuck it out this long. Oh, Jessica Thompson, I'm sorry. It's been almost 3 hours. Well, it's been 2 hours and 38 minutes. So, well, I love you all, and please, 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 like, subscribe, share my video, please. And then I'm going to go live tomorrow about the eclipses. So please join me for that. That will be fun, talking about the eclipse. So I love you very much, and have a wonderful evening, and whatever you're having for all my friends around the world. And come back.